camera's improved upon that one. We'll just have a look around the box quickly just to see the specifications on the side here. As you can see, it's got a 1.5-inch screen on it and it records in MOV format. Now it's also got this picture of this incredibly fed up looking chap with the camera strapped to the side of his head. But never mind him, let's have a look inside the box and see what you get. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know I'm not one of those unboxing type of people. I'll just tip the contents of this out and we'll have a look at what you actually get. Also in this video there'll be some sample footage. Of course the whole video is in 720p, so you're not going to get the full effect, but you'll get some idea. Now let's have a look at some of these things here. This is a car 12V power charger with a USB on it. That's a home charger with a USB plug on the end of it. That's a Euro plug on that one. This is a handlebar holding thingamajig. We'll put all the mounts to one side. There's another mount and there's another one for the windscreen. We'll look at those properly in a minute. Now this is a microphone with a 2.5mm 3-ring plug on the end of it and a little microphone with a clip on that end. There's an elastic strap here, which I think is what that fed up looking chap had strapped the camera to his head with. And then there's this smaller strap which isn't elastic and that's sort of got Velcro on it to hold it together. This is your standard phono AV out lead, standard def of course. You've got a 2.5mm 3-ring plug on the end of there as well to go in the AV out socket on the back of the camera. We've got a USB A to mini B lead for charging and data transfer. We've got an HDMI full size to mini lead for playing the footage back on your television, and then we're left with the camera and the instruction booklet, which we'll put to one side. We'll just have a look at some of these mounting options. You've got a double-sided piece of sticky 3M stuff and a couple of bits of Velcro there. Now let's see how all these different mounts fit together. Well, first off, here is a windscreen mount. We'll take this cover off here. That's to stop this tacky pad getting anything on it. The other end has got a ball joint on it, and that can be manipulated in lots of different directions, of course, and tightened up or loosened by twisting that thread there. The other end here, if we can see that on the camera, you've got lock and unlock when you twist that thing there, which of course pulls the suction thing in and out to hold it onto your windscreen, and it's a good solid one then. I've tried it on my windscreen, it seemed pretty firm, it wasn't going to fall off. Now this other end here clicks onto the camera. That's a good firm push needed to clip that into there, and there you go. So that's how it fits on there. You can spin the camera around, you can do all sorts of things, and then when you've got it in the position that you want it to be in, you can twist that thread. Now this thing, this kind of L bracket, has a tripod hole on one side of it and clips on the other side of it to clip to the bottom of the camera, just like the car mount did. So we'll clip that on there now. Notice the camera's also got a tripod hole on the bottom of it there. So you can either have a tripod hole on the bottom of the camera, or if you click this to the camera, which requires quite a firm push again, you can have a tripod hole on the side of the camera. And also, if you want, you can of course attach that car mount that we just used there, that windscreen mount, to the holes on the side of this bracket. If I can get it located, push that in and you can hold the camera, I suppose, like that. Although this is a pretty weighty device, I'm not too sure whether it would stay put if you did that. How weighty, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. It's either 223 grams or 7.8 ounces. That's pretty heavy really. So we'll just take this off again. Now, of course, this L bracket thing can go on either side of the camera, so that's quite convenient. We'll just put it... Is that the other side now? I'm sort of lost track of which side I was on now. But also I should mention that there's all these holes in it there, which of course is where the strap would go through if you wanted to either attach it to the bottom or to the side of the camera there. And then the final thing we've got is this handlebar mount. It's an all metal construction with the exception of the sort of rubber insert in the middle here. This bit of rubber here covers up another piece of metal. There's no kind of spring loaded or dampening in this. It's just a chunk of metal that attaches to your handlebars. I've got to be honest, it's not the best thing. I've tried it on mine. It seemed to slide around quite a bit. But you screw the camera into the tripod hole at the bottom here with the thread on there, and then once it's on your handlebars it's pretty much stuck there. You can't do a quick release, you've got to unscrew it again, so not the best thing. Now let's have a look around the camera itself. Notice on the front here, 1080p action camera. That's the only text on the outside of the camera. The other one had that nice Comic Sans font on it that said Xdreme Cam. I think they've realised the error of their ways. Let's have a look inside the back here. You can see the TV out and mic in sockets there, the battery compartment, which we'll just open up now by twisting that little knob, pull the battery out. That battery there, the NP120, That's good for 3 hours of recording time I've found from my own test. Now that's of course with the screen turned off, but that's in 1080p mode, so that's pretty cool. You've got a standard SD card slot there, an HDMI out and a USB port as well. On the top here we've got 3 buttons. Now these are kind of rubber coated. You can see it says record, the middle one's power, the bottom one's mode. We'll just turn it on by holding the middle one down for quite a bit until it comes on. And you can see there the screen's got quite a bit of information on it. It's quite a nice sharp screen actually. It's quite easy to read under the right lighting conditions. Now one strange quirk of these cameras is that the microphone is hidden inside the back of them. So to be able to record any sound you have to hold that door open, because the microphone's somewhere inside that mic socket as far as I can make out. If you close it to make it waterproof by closing the clip here, a small amount of sound does get in through that hole there, but it's not really very clear. Now while we've got it on the bottom here, we'll just have a look round. You've got the tripod hole there, you've got a screw at the front which is like a heat sink, and then a speaker at the back. Now on the bottom here at the back you can see below the screen you've got 4 buttons. The left hand one's the menu, and of course that's also controlled with the 3 buttons on the top here. So in total you've got 7 buttons on the camera. We'll press the left hand one to get into the first menu, which is movie playback, second one is photo playback, and third one is menus and setups and things. Then fourth one brings it back round to the beginning again. There's a mode button on the top there, which if you press that it goes into photo mode. If you press it again it goes back into video mode. Now the previous camera had a button that just took photos, but this one you have to change modes. Now let's just get into those menus there, and I'll try and go through these as quickly as possible. Resolution, full HD 30 means 1920 by 1080 at 30 frames a second. You can also get that at 25 frames a second. 1080p 30 means 1440 by 1080p at 30 frames a second, or 25 frames a second. And then you can get 720p at 60, 50, 30 and 25 frames a second, and then WVGA at 60 and 30 frames a second. Now let's just look at some of those bit rates. Right, so full HD is 8.67 megabits a second. 1440 by 1080 is 8.80 megabits a second. 720p 60 is 8.37 megabits a second, and 720p 30 is 8.26 megabits a second. Now those are variable bit rates. They will vary slightly, but not by an awful lot. Back to the menus, and the photos you can do at various different resolutions, but you're probably best leaving them at 5 megapixels, I think. Everything else is probably upscaled. Record overwrite. This means you can loop the video around in 2, 5, 15 or off. Those are the size of the segments that it will record. Motion detection, you can make it record 30 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 5 minutes or off. That's how long it would record if it saw motion, if you set that off and running. Here are the different languages. I'll just flick down these so that everyone can see them. Maybe you can pick out your own favourite there. Quality, high, medium and low, we'll ignore that. Time and date we can change. Timestamp you can have on or off. Flicker and TV type, boring. White balance, you can change it between different types of conditions. And auto exposure bias, you can have it go up or down. You can have it +2 or -2 or various different increments in between. Quite useful that. Contrast, you can have it standard, hard or soft, and the same with the sharpness. I've just left them on standard for my test videos, these. In fact, I've left everything on auto. I think this simulates different ISO values, but again, I left it on auto. You can have the volume for the playback volume, and then you can have the beep sound on or off, format the card in it, have the auto power off switch itself off in standby after certain different types of lengths of time, I should say. Auto turn off for the LCD, very important that one, set that quite low to get maximum battery life. Self capture, this is for stop motion and things. You can have it take a picture every 3, 5, 10, 30 seconds, 1 minute or off, and then you can put all those together and make your own little time-lapse video, which I tried doing. It didn't work out too well on this one for me, and that is the firmware version. Now I'll just go back to that intriguing self-capture mode. So I've already set it up to take a photo every 3 seconds, so we'll press the mode button. You can see in the middle of the screen there 3 seconds with a countdown timer. So if I press the record button, that starts counting down. Every time it gets to 0 it takes another picture, and it'll keep doing that until either the card is full or the battery's flat. You set the resolution of the photos you want to take, of course, in that other menu. Now here's something that I tried to do. Didn't work very well because the candle was too bright really for the lens. Now one thing this camera does that the other one didn't do is it doesn't wake the screen up every single time it takes a picture, which means that the battery life, if you're doing one of these self-capture things, will be an awful lot longer than it was on the other one. You can still see that it's on because the red lights are there at the bottom and it's still capturing, but at least it's not waking the screen up and running the battery down. One of the big advertised improvements over the previous camera is the automatic image orientation. And what that means is, if the camera's upside down, it'll flip the video the other way up so it's correct. Now it doesn't do this whilst the camera's recording. It only does it when it's in standby mode, and then once you start recording, it fixes the video whatever way up it was when you started recording. Now that's one of the big improvements that they've advertised, but one that I was looking for was sound. The previous camera, the Crocolis, had terrible sound quality, I mean really bad. So let's see if the new one, the Xdreme, does any better. Right, so the first test is me talking to the cameras with the rear doors open on both of them to see what that sounds like. Right, so the first test is me talking to the cameras with the rear doors open on both of them to see what that sounds like. Now I'm going to go and close those doors. Okay, so now both doors are closed, so you can probably hardly hear anything I'm saying to you now. So now I'm going to try the microphone. Okay, so this is the microphone in the Crocolis camera. Not too sure how this sounds. Right, I'm going to put the microphone into the Xdreme camera now. Okay, so this is the microphone in the Xdreme camera, so let's see how that sounds. Wow, that was pretty exciting, nail-biting stuff, wasn't it? But I think it's pretty obvious from that the Xdreme camera is much better at sound than the previous Crocolis camera. But one of the other problems of the Crocolis was its low light capabilities. So let's test that out. This is quite a decisive win for the Xdreme cam. Look at the Crocolis first of all, you can't really see much at all. This is the Xdreme cam in the exact same situation, held in the hand at the same time. I'm going to show them side by side here, and notice the Xdreme on the right there, you can make out what I'm looking at. On the Crocolis it's all dark. I'll just pan up towards the sky now so you can see I am filming the same thing. So quite a decisive win for the Xdreme there. Now let's go outside and do some more filming. So first off, this is the Woosang supermarket in Manchester. I'm stood across the road from it. This is 1080p, and now we'll move to 720p. Notice the wider image there in 720p, which is one of the quirks of these cameras. We'll go to the Crocolis, same shot, a bit pastier. Everything seems a little bit more washed out. Let's go inside the shop. Right, this is the Xdreme camera again now. Quite nice, bright, vibrant colours, quite a bright shop. Notice very fisheye. Let's just change over to the Crocolis. It's gone darker and the colours have gone a bit duller as well. The Xdreme camera was more accurate to what I was seeing at the time. It was much brighter than this. There's the Crocolis. Let's flip back to the Xdreme cam to show a still, and then back to the Crocolis again to show it's kind of gone a bit duller. Okay, we've decided now the Xdreme's better, so let's just carry on with that for a minute. This is 1080p here. You notice we've got a bit of a fisheye lens, well, a big fisheye lens effect. 720p makes it worse. A lot of people don't like the fisheye effect, but it's something I just wanted to demonstrate there. Now this is 1920 by 1080 at 30. I've zoomed in on a section here using my editing tool so you can read the Starbucks sign there. Now there's 1440 by 1080 at 30, so I'm going to zoom in on the same section again so you can see if it's changed. Hardly any difference at all, probably because it's actually recording at 1440 regardless. Most of these sensors do in these cameras. 1920 is usually upscaled. Now here's 1280 by 720 at 30 frames a second. Zoom in on that there, you can see the Starbucks logo's got a bit softer there, but it's not a complete dead loss, but 1080p is definitely sharper. Now here I am looking at the fountains in Piccadilly Gardens. You can see that's 1080p there. Let's move out. 720p. The sun did come out between those shots, so the brightness difference is more to do with the sun than the cameras. And finally, just do a shot here. I think this was in 1080. I can't quite remember now. I've took so many different shots, but just to give you a nice idea of what things look like. It's nice and sharp. The camera doesn't have any built-in stabilisation, but the fact it's got such a wide angle lens on it means that sometimes it actually looks like it's being stabilized, because you can see so much in the shot. The sort of small vibrations that you might make with your hand aren't that easy to see. Now we'll just show a couple of photos very quickly. They're all in 4:3 format. I took these in 5 megapixel mode, nothing to write home about, pretty much like snapshots from the camera really. And you can take snapshots whilst you're taking video, and you can also take snapshots whilst you're playing it back by pressing some buttons, so you can actually take freeze frames out of the footage if you want. Let's do some driving footage now. So this is it. I'm sticking both cameras inside the car, but in the end I mostly use the Xdreme footage here. Here I am. It's all in 1080p this. Give you an idea, that's what that looks like. Quite nice footage. Of course, these aren't car cameras as such. They don't sort of auto start and stop when you start and stop your engine or anything like that. I'm just showing the car mount here. You have to start and stop it yourself. Now just look at this. I'm going to show you the gap between clips. Sometimes you get a gap between them. This is clip 1 and that's clip 2 there. You didn't see any gap at all, did you? And that's because there is no gap. Now let's just have a look at how it copes with light and dark. So we'll go under this sort of bridge here. It's quite dark, coming out into the brightness. Now it is taking quite a while to adjust its iris to the conditions. It's still adjusting it now, as you can see, because eventually you get to see the clouds there. There you go. So that it is quite slow at doing that, but that's quite normal. Now let's have a look at night time. I'm out and about, 11 o'clock at night I think this was, yeah, getting on for. Now this is quite a well lit area, so it's coming across quite well really. You can actually see some colour. Quite often in the dark you can't make colour out on video, so it's doing quite well. Although we'll look at the Crocolis. Now this is what the Crocolis saw in a very similar location. It wasn't the same one because the battery ran out by the time I got there. Why did it run out? Because the screen wouldn't switch off. For some reason the screen doesn't switch off when you want it to on the Crocolis, which kills the battery very quickly. Back to the Xdreme cam. In low light, I mean lower light than we were in before because there aren't as many street lights, it's pretty dark, but then again it was pretty dark, so what do you expect? Now with it being an Xdreme cam, I thought I should do something a bit more exciting and attach it to the motorcycle, but I don't really fancy using this mount here. It doesn't seem very good. It slides around quite a bit. I thought about attaching it to the helmet with this thing, but I didn't really want to damage my motorcycle helmet, so in the end I stuck it to the grab rails on the back of the bike, pointing backwards, so all this footage that you're going to watch now is going away from you rather than towards. So here we are first off in 1080p mode. Now this is coming across very nicely for me. I don't know what it'll look like when I finally upload it to YouTube. It's probably going to look a lot worse than this, but there's no noticeable artifacts or blocking or anything like that. The previous version had a lower bitrate than this one, and it didn't do so well in sort of light and dark. It made things blocky. This one's a lot better. We'll flip over to 720p mode now and set off again. Now this is 720p 60, not that you can see that on YouTube because it'll be in 30 frames a second, but the original footage was 720p 60 anyway. Now there is something that's a little bit wrong with this. I don't know if it's because of the direction I'm heading or what, but what the camera seems to be doing is making things too dark. It's adjusting the brightness for the sky, as you'll see in a minute here. You can see the sky quite well there, the clouds and things all coming across rather nice. But as we turn this corner, you'll notice that the road is a little bit too dark. So it's got the exposure a bit wrong there. Now, I say it might be because I could have been heading away from the sun. The sun could have been shining at the camera, I'm not too sure. To be honest, I was looking the other direction. But I think I need to learn a bit more about this camera, maybe increase the exposure value or adjust those settings for the different conditions and things. Now when I came back driving up that hill with the Crocolis camera, you'll see the brightness on this one's quite a lot better. It's adjusted itself a lot better for the situation, but maybe that's because I was heading in the other direction. We'll never know, but just something to bear in mind. You might need to twiddle with those settings a bit to get the best brightness. Now, in much the same way that Minority Report predicted future crimes, I'm going to try and predict some future questions that I might get asked on YouTube and answer them before you get there. So first one is, people never seem to believe that things are waterproof unless I prove it by throwing them in water. So is it waterproof? Well, yes it is. Next, can you record and charge at the same time? Well, let's find out. We'll start it recording. As you can see here, it says record at the top left. So we'll plug in that USB charging lead into the USB port here, if we can get it the right way round, And you'll notice now I've got a blue light and a red light showing, which seems to indicate to me it's probably charging and recording. And if we look at the screen there, still recording, and at the top right, a picture of a plug. So yes, you can charge and record at the same time. Next question. Can you record and stream the video from the AV out at the same time? Right, start it off recording like we did before, plug it into this television here, and there we go. Live footage coming from the camera. Notice at the top left there it says record. So yes, you can record and stream at the same time. Now let's go completely crazy. Can you record and charge and stream at the same time? Well, yes you can. Recording still, as you can see, and at the top right there's a picture of a plug. So there you go, the full Monty. Right, I think we've exhausted that now. Oh, let's also have a look at some of those menus while we're here. You can see all those on the screen here, just the same as you could before. You can get into all the different menus here, playback photos, and look through all the different settings and things. So basically you can copy everything that you were doing using a little screen on the back of the camera using the AV out. Probably not a question someone's going to ask, but I'll just flip that one in the middle here. One question that someone will ask: will the camera auto start and stop if I use the car power lead? Well, I did mention it earlier on, but just in case you weren't listening, no, it's not a car camera, it's an action camera. If you plug the power lead in, it'll just charge it. Next one, can that lens be removed? No, it can't. What's it made out of? Probably plastic. I'm no expert on this kind of stuff. Can it zoom? No, it can't zoom. It's a fixed lens. You can do a digital zoom inside the camera, but don't bother. Right, let me mention a few things that I came across during my tests. The first one, that screen bleaches out quite easily in daylight. It's quite hard to see when you're outside. I think it might be slightly worse than the previous camera in that regard. You have to cup it under your hand to see it. The orientation sensor has a couple of things. When it's upside down, it's fine for videoing, but if you go into the menus, you'll find they're still the traditional way up, which might make it slightly confusing to operate. Another thing with it, the camera will go to sleep whilst it's recording, which is great because that means the battery life lasts an awful lot longer. I mean, the screen goes off, but the camera's still recording, as you can see from this blue light. However, if the camera gets a knock like that, the orientation sensor wakes the camera up. Now, if you're doing anything slightly extreme with the camera, it's going to be waking up all the time, which will run your battery down quite quickly. The new camera uses these raised rubberized buttons rather than the traditional buttons of the previous model. And that means that sometimes you're not entirely sure that you've pressed them, and on a number of occasions I had to press record a couple of times before it stopped recording. Also, the new camera uses a mode button to switch into photo mode, whereas the previous camera had a separate photo button. The older camera also had all these screws all over it, which seemed to give it a handmade type of feel, but it felt quite good quality as well. The new one's all sort of plastic construction, which presumably cuts down on costs, but it also looks a little bit cheaper. The menus in the new one are completely different to the old one. Well, they're in different order anyway, so it's a completely new camera. The new camera is quite a bit more plasticky feeling as well. The other one was more rubberized, but of course you did get that Comic Sans font on the previous one. The clips are a little bit more clicky on the new one than the old one. And also, one thing that I did mention when I did my previous review, I thought it'd be a good idea if you could flip the camera upside down and use the screen like this to film with. Of course, they did that by giving it the orientation sensor, but unfortunately, there is a bit of a problem with it. The camera door doesn't hold open like it did on the previous model. If I hold it open, it just flips down again like this, because it's a little bit more floppy. Also, that clip on the top there, as you can see, sort of flaps around a bit more. Creates a bit of noise on the recording unless you clip it into place, whereas the other one stayed in place. Back when I reviewed the Crocolis HD action camera, it was perhaps the first full HD action cam to come out of China that was actually worth buying, but it did still have a couple of issues, namely the terrible sound recording capabilities and its poor low light ability. Well, fast forward 8 months and the Xdreme cam has fixed both those issues. It's also got better all-round video quality. It's still a bit of a strange shape for an action camera, it's quite bulky, and that orientation sense is a bit of a blessing and a curse. I still don't like the way you have to have that rear waterproof door open if you want to record sound that you can understand. But I would suggest that for the money you'd have a lot of difficulty trying to find a better action camera.